Hi again, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lena Armstrong, VP and Editorial Director with SC Magazine, here with you again. Hope you're enjoying our Identity Management eSymposium so far. Welcome to another of our sessions today, which is being sponsored by NetIQ. Now, most companies are taking advantage of the many new applications as well as the various devices that can make their operations more efficient and effective. Certainly, as we discussed during the keynote earlier, from cloud services to mobile devices, executives are really using what they can to meet day-to-day corporate expectations. But with these new solutions, complexity often quickly follows, especially when it comes to maintaining the various security controls a company has set for its IT environments. So just how can you, as information security professionals, manage the access to information that new apps and devices allow, and what needs to be done to ensure all the various identities enlisting these, accessing them, are kept up to date? Here to discuss how to manage and monitor the identity access and authentication lifecycle to keep your infrastructure safe and sound is Rick Wagner, Director of Product Management for Identity and Access Governance at NetIQ. Welcome, Rick. It's great to have you here to share your advice on maintaining the right access across your network, given all the newer enabling technologies we're seeing out there.
Thank you, and it's great to be here. So, as the moderator stated, environments are constantly changing, and I think we can all agree that the days of managing the identities within the four walls of our organization, within the devices that we provide for our users, we can probably all look back to those days and think that those were very easy times, as opposed to some of the challenges that we're presented with today. If we look at identity and access management in today's world, every organization is different. Every organization faces very different challenges, different business owners, even different individuals who we consider our customers. If you can look at all the different types of applications that are being utilized today, some of them we may not even know about. There could be documents sitting out in Google Docs today that have sensitive information in them. So applications still, there's a variety of on-premise, off-premise, partner-based applications and various ways of accessing those partner applications in the way that we do day-to-day business. And as I stated, there's all different types of user populations. We have our direct employees, contractors, different partners, customers, and trying to give customers more access and more data to information that would entice them to want to do business with your organization. And then I think one of the biggest challenges that faces us today is how individuals access these applications. It used to be the simplistic days of the desktop or the laptop within the data within the four walls of the organization, and when outside it was a simple VPN. And in today's world, these devices are all over the place, and even people walking up to kiosk devices wanting access to applications, and even the explosion of application access through mobile devices and all the challenges that that presents, especially when we're dealing with the bring your own device and how do I manage people within my organization wanting the access, or people even outside my organization wanting access to data within my organization, be it on-premise or in the cloud or a hybrid, and make that safe and secure. As we look at the different challenges of maintaining control, as we see in the news every single day, there's a new breach, and of course, you know, once the press gets a hold of the breach, it tends to be exacerbated. But there are breaches that occur every single day, and looking at you know, some of the organizations that we consider or have a feeling of the most secure organizations in the world, but yet they're experiencing breaches. As I stated, the mobile workforce, everything is mobile. A lot of the organizations today are faced with employees that are constantly on the road, or even partners that are using bring your own device things. cloud-based applications, and either hybrid, where part of the application runs on-prem, part of the application runs in the cloud, and then how do you handle things with an ever-shrinking budget? Every year it's amazing how we're all asked to do more with even less resources. So how do you maintain control and maintain appropriate accesses to individuals with all of the challenges that are presented to us? It's done through a variety of identity and access methodologies and technologies. And there are various different interoperability and interdependencies amongst identity, access, and access utilization. If you look at the elements of identity, we have to understand who you are, what role do you play within the organization, and what relationship do you have to the organization. And all of these individual things are very important to understand what types of access you need within the organization. Employees within the four walls may have certain types of access. Contractors who may be transient have different types of access that you need to pay particular attention to. And then even our partners and customers that we are granting access to specific types of data within our organization. Their access is very interdependent to the identity of that organization. So who they are determines what applications, what systems, what facilities, what resources and data that they get access to on a day in and day out basis. And more importantly, how are they accessing, or one of the important factors to this, is how are they accessing these applications? Is it coming from outside? Is it coming through VPN? Is it coming through a mobile device? And how do you secure this type of information? The third factor in that interdependency is the utilization. Is the activity that this individual is asking for or is currently using, is it aligned to the roles and policies of the organization? Am I effectively managing privileged access control? And how do I distinguish an attacker from, is it inside activity or outside? There's often, most often, users on the inside are simply trying to do basic things to get their job done, but in some cases, it's not necessarily appropriate or doesn't align to the policies and procedures that have been lined out in the corporate governance statement. And how do you monitor what these individuals are doing? And is it anomalous behavior? Can I use information as to how users are accessing applications to determine how effective my role infrastructure is, or how effective access certification and access request is? So looking at all of these elements and how interdependent they have become on one another in today's current organization. So if we look at the challenge that we're all faced with, and it's a very basic core fundamental challenge, do the right people have access to the right resources at the right time and from the appropriate location? Being able to make sure that this individual, their relationship to the organization, has the right access to the appropriate resources at the right levels of data from where they need to have it from. And is that a constant, ongoing, monitored situation so that you understand, so that security individuals or risk analysis individuals within your organization understand the risks that are currently being presented to the organization? It's very much a fine balance. What is right may vary by organization. Business is ever evolving. The one thing I think we can all agree to in this world is the one constant is change. The business constantly changes. There's always, we're looking at buying a certain portion to add to our portfolio. We may be divesting. We may be taking on new partners. New partners that we take on may be a partner in one segment of the business, but a competitor in another segment of the business. And how do you mitigate all of those various risks that are presented based upon these changes and challenges? You want to be able to provide the end user, again, be it a direct employee, a contractor, a partner, a customer, the right flexibility so that they can effectively get their job done, however, maintain the necessary controls to make sure that, first and foremost, that the organizational name stays out of press, but also to make sure that information is secure and that you can't, when there are suspected breaches or suspicious activities that occur within the environment, that you are alerted in the appropriate amount of time in order to take the right amount of action to shut down anything that may be inappropriate, to question it, and to have the right contextual information at your fingertips in order to do the appropriate investigation and to keep things from happening that shouldn't happen. So let's take a little bit closer look at what this means. The right access requires the proper context. What are they trying to access? Where are they accessing it from? Why are they accessing it? And when, add critical value to who is accessing the information. If we look at all the different aspects, again, all of these different aspects of these individuals and what they're trying to do, they're all very much intertwined, and all of these questions have to be answered in order to understand if things are appropriate within the guidelines of established policies, and if things fall outside the boundaries of those established policies, that they are handled in the appropriate time frame to prevent data breaches and with the appropriate context so that we can understand all of these components within a central repository without having to spend an exorbitant amount of time doing extensive research to try to find out all the different aspects. So if we look at things like what is being accessed, what is that resource? Where is the access originating from? Is it within the four walls of my organization? Is it outside the four walls of my organization? Is it a local device? Is it a mobile device? Why was the access granted to an appropriate individual? If you look at the very simplistic request for an access for an application, if somebody is getting it, was it automated through a specific policy because they are an employee or they are a contractor or they're a partner? Was it done based upon an approval process? And who owns that approval process? Why do they even own that process of approving the appropriate access? And then when? If you look at the frequency of the access, how the individual is using the particular access, where is it coming from, et cetera, all that ties into a centralized, who is this individual, what relationship do they have with my organization, why are they utilizing these resources, under what circumstance are they utilizing these resources, and what does that mean to the security of my business? We look at all those different aspects and all of those different components to allow organizations to be able to make sure that the right access is granted under the proper context at the right time, and then once it's granted, have the ability to provide the user activity monitoring and the tracking of the usage of those resources. And when anomalous behaviors occur, to be able to react to them, to have the right contextual information as it relates to the application security events, to be able to provide for very quick research, understand what impact it has to the application and the business as a whole, and take the appropriate actions. And those appropriate actions can be anywhere from shutting out specific individuals or administrators, all the way to basically shutting down applications because a specific breach has occurred. So all of these things have to be provided in a specific, rich context. Make sure that, again, the right people have the right access to the right application. The right access also equals intelligent access. As I stated earlier, the right people do have the right resources at the right time, and most importantly, when someone's relationship to the organization changes, from something as simple as I'm changing departments internally, I'm moving from a contractor to a full-time employee, or maybe full-time to contract, or I've, from a partner perspective, I've moved from one partner to another partner. And because my relationship from a partner perspective has changed, that I have to make sure that that access changes appropriately and as close to that time of change as possible. But the balance needed in order to match the appropriate access to the business needs can sometimes be quite challenging. Are the policies and controls in place, and our organizational risk threshold set in order to understand when policies and controls are violated or a suspected breach occurs, that we can react accordingly, make sure that it is focused in on the specific individual or individuals that are in question so that we don't overreact and thus take away the flexibility. It goes back to the old adage of punish the many because of the mistakes of the one or the few. We want to make sure that those are very effectively balanced and understand that even though certain circumstances occur and we need to react to the individual, that the flexibility of my other partners or the other partners within the same organization or the other employees aren't compromised. And again, the other balancing side of the fact of this is to make sure that the business is getting the value out of the IT investment. One of the absolute worst things to do is to create policy for the sake of policy and make it difficult for individuals to be able to get access to the right resources that they need. The appropriate thing is for the IT resources or the investment to be able to assist in balancing the business and not vice versa, that the business doesn't have to adapt to the actual IT investment itself. So if we look at the concept of intelligent access and what does this mean to an organization, being able to provide intelligence within an identity context. If we look at a holistic view of identity and access management, it typically starts with an access request. I need access to some specific resource, and that could be granted through one of many ways. It could be automated through policy. It could be an access from a physical human-based workflow request, or because I am a member of a particular role in a relationship to an organization. Once that access request is processed, the next piece of that would be the actual provisioning and fulfillment. Now, that provisioning and fulfillment, in some instances, can be a manual process of somebody being able to request and then the manual fulfillment and provisioning of that application. It could also, in a more expedient manner, be automated from an automated provisioning fulfillment process. So I request something, I am granted the access to the application, and I'm notified, and therefore I can begin using it. Once I start using the application, then being able to look at and monitor how individuals are utilizing the particular resource that they've been provisioned to determine, do they still need it? Are they using it under normal, expected circumstances? And then when I have to recertify, I can actually use that data to have a greater understanding as to the actual need of the particular resource that user is being recertified for. If I have access recertification and I don't know, and it's not appropriate, I don't have the contextual information to understand how they're utilizing that application, then that can become a challenge, where business application owners who are expected to do access recertification are simply approving these things sometimes in the blind. They've had it before, so I'm assuming that they're going to continue to need it in the future. Being able to provide an understanding as to how users are accessing information and providing that information back into the recertification process gives a much more rich view, a more realistic view as to if access recertification is necessary. More importantly, being able to look at anomalous user activities and to be able to find that quote-unquote needle in the haystack so that when anomalous activities occur either by one or more individuals, that perhaps I can automate the process of recertification. So I have a good understanding, instead of waiting a time period for recertification, I can actually bring that to the forefront to the appropriate security and or business application owner or IT security personnel to the forefront in a much quicker fashion and understand this type of behavior is outside normal practices and I need to look at it. So instead of looking at a large group of individuals who may need access recertification, I can slim it down to those specific anomalous activities and then again automate that process of revoking if necessary. So as you can see, all of these things are intertwined and are necessary in order to establish a full 360-degree view of identity and access management. If we drill a little bit farther into this, 3 specific key processes of intelligent access. To build on what I stated previously, there's access request, access fulfillment, authorization, and then monitoring. The fulfillment being an identity management system that can automate the granting and revocation and or change of access to specific applications. Access management systems enforce patterns, enforce the access of the specific individual, the user, the partner, the customer, et cetera, and then monitoring to understand the security trending and tracking, observing what these individuals are doing, looking for the improper activities, looking for the anomalous behaviors to feed back into access fulfillment. Again, this information allows the business needs, the flexibility of the business needs while maintaining the control within the IT resources and those assets. And most importantly, the assets specifically related to the intellectual property of the organization, customer data, et cetera, where those news items, where the items that tend to hit the news are the most newsworthy. Each of these items within the NetIQ portfolio specifically help to address the flexibility of the business needs within the controls of the IT resources and assets. So within the access monitoring, being able to look at risks and trends, things like security intelligence, log management, through access authorization, single sign-on, user authentication, privileged access management, and through access fulfillment. Being able to request and automate the processes of provisioning users to the appropriate resources. And as they are provisioned to those resources, making sure that the appropriate access is turned on as well, and then utilizing the access monitoring to continuously review, to monitor and review if that access is still appropriate to the organization. So in summary, if we look at identity and access and security within the organization, every organization is different. And not every organization is going to want to start in the same place. Every organization has different needs and different priorities. And the flexibility of being able to look at things like access request and certification and being able to bring some balance and logic into that process and very easily have something as simple as access request and certification prevalent or visible within your organization quickly. And then the flexibilities of adding on the automated provisioning processes once the request and certification process is in place. So I can go from manual fulfillment to automated fulfillment as a next step in my roadmap of managing my identity, access, and security. If I want to start with the automated fulfillment of that based upon standard policies and procedures, that's definitely another jump start area for organizations to start in. So not every organization is going to have the same challenges and want to start in the same areas. And the flexibility of being able to select and integrate all of these different components through out-of-the-box integration is a distinct advantage that NetIQ has as a leader in identity access, governance, and security. This is definitely a place that we have been in the marketplace for a significant period of time as a market leader, and being able to very uniquely integrate identity access and security is one of the strengths that we provide as an organization. So with that, if you want to learn more information and visit the virtual booth, there's definitely opportunities to do that. And at this point, I will open it up for a question and answer.
Very good. Thank you very much, Rick. A lot of good, sound information that you've shared with us. We definitely have some questions, and so I'll tackle the first one. This attendee is from a small home-based business. It's a training startup. They have less than 5 employees, less than $5K total annual budget. I mean, you know, times are certainly tight. And they need security for their employees, certainly their proprietary information, clients, client data. They want to cover current access requirements and allow the business to grow very significantly over the next few years. So she's looking for some recommendations. Do you have any recommendations as to what she can do to meet all of those necessary needs, and then find solutions that will grow with the company, of course?
Most definitely. And there's a couple of different places to start. In smaller organizations, and even in large organizations, it's typically a good launching point to start with a very simple access request type system, like our Access Governance Suite, to be able to have users be able to request access to particular resources, and then be able to monitor that type of data, and then add some simple monitoring utilities like our log management to be able to review that. Those are very simplistic, nice, easy entry points for any organization, really, but for small organizations, it tends to fit very appropriately.
Very good. Thank you. So in speaking with a couple of CSOs recently about, and these CSOs are from very large enterprises, they're dealing with hundreds of thousands of identities, and they're looking not only to safeguard their internal, the insider access, contractor access to data, but also, of course, customer data. They were in the financial space. And so part of the issue for them seemed to be in just trying to get the necessary preparation done before they even went to deploying a solution. So even though you went through sort of several different kinds of life cycles, I wonder if you can talk about what's really important. Like, what would you suggest to organizations as far as the steps they need to take to ensure they have everything in order before they even go out to solution providers? Should they be consolidating their identity data stores? Should they be making sure that their current, do an inventory, if you will, of their current processes? I mean, what are some of the necessary steps they need to take first?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges, I shouldn't say the biggest challenge, but in embarking on identity and access management deployments, organizations typically look at things like the amount of identity stores that they have. And it's not necessarily a consolidation that's going to make things any faster, any smoother, or any easier. It's an understanding of which applications own which components of my identity, and how am I going to ensure that those particular components, those particular stores of identity information, house those attributes, and the attributes are used together to really provide the sum of my identity. So looking at different stores, like an HR system, very simplistic terms, an HR system owns your first name, your last name, and the department that you belong in. The email system owns your email address. The department that you're a member of, maybe a sub-department, can start to look at what applications you should have access to. The other challenge is to look at how should the automated provisioning process start? Does everything have to require some type of managerial approval or some type of application owner approval? Can I automate these processes so that through policy, established policy, provisioning can be very automated and turned off and turned on? Those are the types of things that really should be investigated when embarking on these types of products. And sometimes it can be very simplistic from the standpoint of, can I just start out by keeping track of and have access request with a manual fulfillment of the provisioning process, and then begin to, after I get that part in line, I can take the next step and plug in the module of being able to automate that fulfillment. And I may start with the automation in baby steps. I may have 10 applications that I can request through my Access Request system, but then maybe I start to I begin to plug in things and automate it. So I start off with automating 2 of those 10, maybe automating another 2 of those 10 after I get them completed, so that there is benefit and there is successes that are being seen throughout the deployment. In a lot of cases, these deployments tend to be extracted out over a long period of time because there aren't those steps along the ways to show successes, and therefore the visibility of those projects and what meaning they bring back to the business aren't seen for a long period of time, and therefore are called into question. They do return value, but being able to show that value over a period of time with incremental steps tends to mean much more successful implementations.
Yeah, certainly. Even now, I would imagine. In the past, I would imagine that was the case, but certainly even now, given the trying economic times that we still face, it would be ever more important to show the return on investment there.
Most definitely, and that's where it tends to be. Where organizations, they want to see that return on investment. If I'm investing in identity and access and security in order to streamline it and have a better control over or better management of risk within the business, to be able to show those incremental steps of success is much more powerful.
So what about any cultural or other challenges that professionals need to be mindful of when they're rallying the business units to support the rollout of an identity management system and the supporting processes? Have you seen, in your experience, anything kind of crop up with customers or potential customers as they were trying to deploy their identity control system?
Not necessarily, no. It tends to be within identity and access management deployment, it tends to be much more political within the organization as to who owns what. So making sure that all of the application owners, all of the business owners, all the stakeholders really understand what the ultimate value and end result is planned to be tends to help the organization as a whole adopt the processes of the automated request, automated fulfillment, and then the monitoring of those applications. If all the stakeholders are part of the process, it tends to be a much stronger deployment, much greater success in a very short in a much shorter time frame.
Very good. So in your opinion, what does the increased adoption of cloud and software as a service applications mean for identity and access management users and also vendors? What do you see coming down the pike there?
The use of cloud-based resources is definitely growing. Stepping back and looking at it from an end-user perspective, a user sitting at their desktop or at their laptop or even on their mobile device, when they access an application, that end user, to them it should be seamless and irrelevant as to exactly where that application resides. If it's a partner-based application and I'm federating to it, the end user, if you take Susie or Bill in accounting, they don't want to know, nor do they need to know, oh, this is a federated partner application. All they know is when they click on that icon, tap on it on their mobile device, etc., they want that access. To them, it's irrelevant as to where it resides, cloud, local, partner, etc. Making all of that, the provisioning and access seamless behind the scenes is our job as IT and security administrators. So making sure that access is seamless to that end user is by far seen as the greatest success. So from our perspective, and the increased adoption of cloud is to make sure that the identity, access, and security management products that are selected have those things in mind, that I can provision to a resource regardless of where it resides. If it's an on-premise application, or if it's a software as a service application, Google Docs, Salesforce.com, etc., that the provisioning is based upon established policies. And then when users access those resources, that it is done in a very secured manner based upon the rules of the organization. And one of the largest challenges of those cloud-based applications is to make sure that when the relationship of that individual is terminated for some reason, that access is turned off appropriately. So that because it is a software as a service that does reside in the cloud, that provisioning of that resource, even though it is cloud-based, is still tied back to the relationship of my organization. And that's what we try to bring to light within our products, is that regardless of where that application is, the access is still tied to that overall relationship within the organization. And when that relationship changes for any reason, that the provisioning of that resource, be it on-prem or cloud or a hybrid, is affected immediately as well.
Very good. So we have a couple of minutes left, and I wonder, Rick, if you could tell us maybe the top 1, 2, 3 questions that you would advise a security professional looking at a variety of identity and access management solutions to ask of the vendors to ensure that that his or her company is really getting the solution that's right for their enterprise. What are the top questions that they really need to throw at vendors?
I think that there's the 3 biggest challenges that we have been discussing, I think, really leads to the answer to that question. The first one is, can I effectively aggregate the identity of an individual from the various component stores within my environment? Can I look at an individual and understand their relationship? Are they a partner? Are they a direct employee? Are they a contractor, et cetera? Secondly is, how effective can that provisioning process be, and how easy is it to deploy and maintain that? Again, a challenge being organizations are in a constant state of change, and I want to be able to adapt my provisioning, access, and security policies very easily at the change that my businesses will be undertaking. And if I can't do that, then you're asking the organization to work to the product and not vice versa. The way it should be is those resources should adapt to the organization and how the organization wants to continue to evolve. And then lastly, do I have that feedback of how resources are being used, and how do I use that information from a contextual understanding of anomalous behavior so that I can react to it to more easily prevent breaches from happening, and then to be able to understand the continuous, how effective my role system, my role management is, and understanding the usage patterns of the individuals to the roles, and do individuals still effectively need access to applications. So making sure that all of those things, and not necessarily that it all has to be deployed in one specific chunk, that I can adopt, adapt, and grow.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, that ends this webcast for us for the e-symposium today. If you have, if we missed some of your queries, we'll definitely follow up with you via email. I'd like to thank NetIQ's Rick Wagner for providing some very excellent suggestions to help manage identities and access across today's complex networks. We certainly hope you enjoy the rest of our e-symposium, and thank you for clicking in, as always.